All right, we're talking about load today because I get a lot of questions from people wondering kind of what it is. Does it really matter? Like, why should I pay attention to it? All of those things. So here we go. All right. So when we're trying to train, I've mentioned this before, our goal with training and trying to get people stronger or even in rehab as well is you're trying to build the capacity for an athlete to do something. So you're trying to move what we call from like the floor to the ceiling, the floor being kind of their current capacity where they're at and the ceiling being where they need to go, whether it's an injury where they need to rehab and get back to playing, or if it's, preseason training and you're trying to get to what you need to be able to do in a game, how much running, how much sprinting, how much stamina you're going to need for that. So as I just mentioned, that when we talk about load, the load is the total amount of physical and physiological stress placed on an athlete. And it's important to understand that this is physical and mental stress. And we can have physical and mental stress either from our workouts and our competitions, from what we call training load. That's the load that we can probably control the most when we're working with athletes. But we also need to understand that there's other load, there's school, there's work, there's life, there's all those other things that happen outside of your sport that does affect training load, because that is a load. And if you already are walking into a practice, for example, the track team at Beaumont, at the high school I work with, was running. They had their regional meet and then they had their state meet kind of sandwiched right around finals week. So they were walking into those final practices before those meets already very tired because they just took 2 final exams. They had maybe been up all night the night before studying. Their brain was totally, fried from the exams. And then we're having them do kind of these final workouts. So understanding that, we dialed way back the weight room that day. I don't even think we did weight room that day or those days, because that was an extra load. They were already kind of at the top. They were already almost up to the brim kind of in terms of load. And they got through the running that they needed to do and the handoffs that they needed to practice. But then we didn't need to do anything else in terms of physical preparation or mental preparation. So just an example of that. So load is important because we can track it. We can track it in a number of different ways. That's a whole nother, I did a video on that. It's on the YouTube channel, just talking about data and what data can do. But just understanding that load is important to keep track of. And when not all load is a bad thing. So gradually increasing that workload actually can reduce injury risk. So if we're preparing for a season that has a lot of games or a lot of competitions or really tough things coming up, if we gradually kind of ramp up that load, that athlete's going to be able to withstand doing those games. And if we pay close attention to how they're responding to a certain training, we can kind of ramp things back down if we need to. If we see that they're, starting to get too fatigued, we don't want them to get an injury that way, and then gradually ramp back up. But if we have time to do all this the right way, we can actually be protective against injury risk if we gradually have a gradual build up to where they need to go. That's called chronic load. So if we build an athlete's chronic load, if we build their kind of bases, I like to call it, this will, in the end, make them better off to withstand the demands of a season, of a lot of games, and it can reduce the injury risk. That's all for today, this week. We'll see you all next week.